All right, man, peace. You know, brothers, one of the great 1980s sports might-have-beens is Mr. Darryl Strawberry. And, of course, his partner in crime, Mr. Doc Gooden, as well. But for the sake of this segment here, we're going to concentrate on Darryl Strawberry, who was one of the most talented sluggers of the 1980s. He played with the New York Mets. My first year watching baseball was his last year on the team. And after that year, he went to the LA Dodgers. He started off very slow that season. I believe it was 1991. But he had a magnificent second half of the season. He ended that year with 28 home runs and something like 90 RBIs, you know, somewhere along those lines. And if I remember correctly, he was able to team up with his best friend from childhood, Eric Davis. They were both from the LA area. I believe that they were both from Compton. So that's why it was so easy for them to team up on the Dodgers. Point being is this. Back in the 1980s, Darryl Strawberry had it all. Great arm, good fielder, tremendous power for that time. Remember, this is before the juice ball era. This is before the tiny ballpark era. So back then, you could hit 36 home runs, 37 home runs, and lead the league in home runs. It's kind of returned to that recently in Major League Baseball. But back then, you could lead Major League Baseball in home runs, hitting somewhere around 38, 40, 42 home runs. And he was that guy throughout the 80s. He was probably the biggest name, or one of the biggest names in baseball. But he ruined it all because of crack. And Darryl Strawberry, since his career, has become a pastor. He's become someone who is a major advocate for not using drugs. And he's a firm believer that marijuana is a gateway drug to crack, cocaine, other hard drugs, etc. Now, Darryl Strawberry's belief and proclamation that marijuana is a gateway drug has, of course, necessitated Mr. Steven Jackson, the former NBA player and borderline woke Negro and weed advocate, to come out against Darryl Strawberry in a very strong way. So, of course, they're going to talk about it, and I'm going to chime in.
All right, moving on to Darryl Strawberry, who is now under attack by a huge NBA star who claims that Darryl is full of crap for saying that marijuana is a gateway drug to harder drugs like crack cocaine. This is bizarre. Now, of course, a lot of sports leagues, the NFL, NBA, UFC, a lot of big sports organizations are lobbying for the use of marijuana as pain medication, right?
It's an alternate to hard drugs like Percocet, oxycodone. It's a more natural approach.
Every time I make these videos about weed, I always get one of these clowns in my comments talking about, don't you know that weed, it can be used as a healer and as a relaxant, and we have cannabinoid receptors. And look, all that stuff is bullshit. When we're talking about the use of weed or marijuana or cannabis or what have you, of course you can use that to heal your body. I've never stated that you cannot use herbs to heal your body. I'm speaking from the perspective of a so-called black man here in this captivity. And I'm speaking to so-called black men in this captivity. And for the most part, so-called black men are not as sharp as they need to be. And I had a couple of so-called liberal Caucasians try to jump into my comments in the last video about the ooey coming to New York. And when that shit happens, you get sprayed on. I spray you with Raid. I'm not interested in your views. I don't give a fuck about your presence. My channel is a pro-truth channel geared toward the so-called black man. There's not a whole hands with everybody channel. And if you don't like that, you hit the unsubscribe button, you move on about your business. I've made no secret about what this channel is about and who it's geared towards. If you're not a so-called black man, you're here as a guest. If you like the videos, cool. But the so-called black man is in a predicament here in this society that nobody else is in. So no, I'm not going to be an advocate for the so-called black man to run around getting high out of his mind and saying, well, you know, what's the big deal? It's just weed, so on and so forth. Yeah, it's okay if you're Steven Jackson and you're a professional athlete, or you were. But if you're a regular so-called black man walking around these streets every day, you have to be aware of what's going on around you. I'm not talking about if your child has seizures, that they should not be using cannabis. Nobody has said that, but they try to obfuscate the issue. Because really what it's about is people want to get blitzed and walk around with their fucking head in the clouds. And I don't give a damn who don't like that.
That's the argument. Now, a lot of people say that it can do just as good of a job with pain management without all of the other effects.
Right.
There are serious movements. A lot of big UFC fighters, a lot of big basketball players, football players are all campaigning to legalize marijuana for pain management in their different leagues.
Once again, the herbs have to be taken orally, not smoked. The only thing that's supposed to be going into your lungs is oxygen. That's it.
Darryl Strawberry is strongly opposed to that. Strongly opposed. It's interesting because Darryl Strawberry had a huge substance abuse problem, was suspended 3 times during his Major League Baseball career for cocaine. And when we saw him at LAX the other day, he led up the case for saying, no, do not legalize use of marijuana for pain management. It is wrong. It will harm people. I'm living proof. This is what Darryl Strawberry said. Take a look.
Most people don't understand marijuana is a drug, and it's just the marijuana maintenance. It's the beginning, starting people off when they're young, and then leads to everything else. So, it's the gateway. I started marijuana when I was young, 14, 15 years old, and led me to everything else. And anything that alters your mind will change your mind forever.
I agree, sir. A lot of people are not going to like that. They're going to say, what are you talking about? Marijuana doesn't alter your mind. It opens your mind up to what's going on around here in society. Man, please. I've never met one weed head who was astute and who was sharp. I'm talking about amongst so-called black men. I'm not talking about anybody else. Whatever you want to do, you go ahead on and do. I'm talking to the so-called black man. Never met one who I spoke to who was blitzed out of his fucking mind, who knew what was going on. All I saw was, yeah, son. Yeah, I feel you, my nigga. Man, get out of here. Go get your shit together.
What's the best move for pain management? There's no such thing for pain management, far as, prescription drugs.
Right, but Darryl, that's not what he asked you. He asked you, what's the best thing for pain management? In other words, the interviewer or the questioner is saying, if you don't want them to use marijuana, what would you like them to use? Prescription drugs? No. You can still use cannabis, but it has to be taken orally. Certain people might say, well, that's the same effect. At the end of the day, if you're trying to heal an ailment, that's totally different from you trying to detach from what's going on around you in society. And people will try to dispute that. They'll claim that they get more acute. You think that you get more acute. You really don't. But if you have an ailment, if you have an illness or sickness, and cannabis is assisting you, then go ahead on and use it. It's an herb that the Most High created to use for healing. The herbs are for healing. They're not for detachment. It's not for you to walk around like a fucking zombie, bugged out of your mind.
Because they've gotten totally out of control, and the pharmaceutical companies got rich, billions of dollars, and people are losing their life.
So that's Darryl Strawberry's case. And by the way, a lot of people agree with Darryl Strawberry. They say that marijuana is a dangerous drug and can lead you down a dark path and get you hooked on other stuff.
Yep.
Steven Jackson, former NBA star, not one of those people. He's a strong advocate for the use of marijuana to treat pain management and also recreational use.
Yeah.
He just likes marijuana a lot.
Yeah, that's the point. It's a recreational use. But they bring up pain management to cover up for what they really want to use it for. And no disrespect to Steven Jackson. Steven Jackson is a dude that you want to be rolling by your side if you have to have a fight in a dark alley. He's not somebody that you should be asking societal questions about, because it's no disrespect. The brother's just not that swift.
He made a video firing back at Darryl Strawberry, and he got personal. Take a look.
Man, Darryl Strawberry, you got to be stopped. Weed is a gateway drug. Bro, you a whole cokehead out here. You skipped that whole class, dog. You ain't even try to roll you up nothing to see. You went straight to the boy. All right?
How you know the man went straight to the boy? Like, come on. The man is giving his testimony. I mean, shit, let's just be happy Darryl Strawberry is still alive. At the end of the day, Steven Jackson, you're not setting a good example for anybody. The so-called black man's at the very bottom of this society. His mind needs to be as clear as possible. Everybody can't be like you and work for ESPN and work for Fox Sports 1 because you were blessed to be 6'7".
Second, weed heads and cocaine, people do coke, we don't even hang around. We don't even want to be around each other.
Bullshit. Most of these rappers that you see on TV rolling up blunts and, trying to push weed, people like Redman and Method Man and, these other rappers, allegedly, behind closed doors, they're really cokeheads. Allegedly.
I don't even know what that felt like. I ain't never experienced that.
Allegedly.
So you are not the person to be talking about marijuana. You a whole cokehead out here, bro.
All he's doing is giving his testimony, brother.
Listening to you talk about weed and asking you for advice about weed is like asking somebody that went broke on how to stay rich.
How would you know that, Steven Jackson? Have you ever smoked a blunt with him? Or are you just talking shit? Come on, man.
Yeah, so that's Steven Jackson's counter argument to Darryl Strawberry's point.
I don't like this, Evan. First, Darryl Strawberry was addicted to drugs. He fought addiction for years, and Steven's making fun of addiction when he calls him a crackhead. I don't think that's right. I also think that Steven Jackson, who I like very much, should have...
Steven Jackson is an addict too. That's why he got so upset. A lot of these weed heads are addicts. They try to act like they're not, but they're addicted to the drug. If you try to quit weed, aka marijuana, whatever you want to call it, you're going to go through withdrawal just like any other drug. Sugar is a drug. If you stop intaking sugar, you're going to go through withdrawal. So Steven Jackson is upset that Darryl Strawberry questioned his God. His God, or one of his gods, is marijuana.
Should have some respect for Darryl Strawberry, who is a much better player in his sport than Steven Jackson was.
I agree, sir. I agree with that. Even though Steven Jackson supposedly believes that he was better than Ray Allen and Carmelo Anthony.
But look, with Steven Jackson...
That's his... But Evan, Darryl's allowed... Who is a pastor now, by the way. Darryl's allowed to have that opinion.
Sure.
And Darryl says personally...
And Steven is...
I mean, Darryl Strawberry is a pastor. What that really means, I mean, in this society, all that really is, that's a place for broke-ass athletes to go to use their name recognition to keep getting paid. A lot of broke-ass athletes went on to become pastors, Randall Cunningham and Darryl Strawberry, so on and so forth. That's a place for athletes to go when they're not quite sure how their revenue is going to keep coming in, so they just pick up a Bible. And no disrespect to Darryl on that. I'm happy that he's still alive and he's trying to keep his act together. But, I mean, come on. But I do take his testimony about weed being his gateway towards cocaine very seriously.
Steven is allowed to have his opinion, but what Steven should have done was he should have used, actual research to counter Darryl Strawberry.
How could he use research? He's a weed head. He don't care about research.
Right, not personal attacks.
That's right. Mark Cuban has launched a multi-million-dollar initiative to do real research into marijuana.
Mark Cuban's a weed head too, probably, allegedly. But I mean, come on. A lot of these high-profile Caucasians, they sit back and they smoke the best weed in the world.
And marijuana to see if there's actual healing effects and do some real research.
There's healing effects, once again, but there's healing effects with the real plant, not a lot of this genetically modified shit that they're going to be giving to the masses. At the end of the day, my bone of contention is so-called black man. When you take a herb into your body, it has to be for your healing, for your maintenance, and it has to be ingested orally, not through your lungs.
Into medical marijuana, and I think that he should be consulting with a guy like Mark Cuban or talking to people in the Nevada State Athletic Commission is looking into legalizing marijuana.
I don't believe it's a gateway, but you can't just flat out dismiss that claim because Darryl has anecdotal evidence. He said, I started with marijuana and then I went to hard drugs. So maybe it is a gateway drug, but there's got to be respect on both sides here.
Well, Steven did say he went too far and ultimately deleted the video.
Okay.
Of course, because he was probably high when he made the video. That's why. He came down off that high. He said, oh man, what the hell I just said about Darryl? I gotta watch myself. He's from Compton. But then again, Steven Jackson got connections to the Bloods too, allegedly. So.
Oh, okay. He didn't apologize. Well, I guess he sort of apologized for taking the personal shot, but he says he will not back off of his stand that medical marijuana should be used to treat pain in professional sports.
Right, but is that really what he was upset about? Once again, this notion about medical marijuana, this is just a red herring used by weed heads to try to push why the intake or the use of marijuana should be normalized. And it's going to affect people down the line because it's going to dull the senses of the so-called black man. And whenever your senses are dulled, that's when they bring in provisions that you should have been able to catch had you been more acutely aware of what was going on around you. But anyway, we'll see how things transpire between Mr. Steven Jackson and Darryl Strawberry. So peace.